He goes by Jeff Stratton, the short man with a tall tail. Let's give him a big round of applause. Let's see. Much better. Whoa, 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 whoa. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Where's Tim? Tim Lowry. I too was a teacher a few years back, Tim, and I understand exactly what it's like. You hope those kids take those lessons out into the world. Anyway, thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it. I am so glad to be here for my second year, and I have to tell you, I wasn't sure that I was going to make it today because I had a series of misadventures last year that almost stopped me from coming here. And had I not come here last year, I wouldn't have competed. Had I not competed, I wouldn't have won. Had I not won, I wouldn't have been invited back. So it goes all the way back to an email about a year and a couple of months ago. My wife called me into the office. Now, those of you who have wives and mothers, we all have certain names we call each other, yes? Terms of endearment. But when they call you by your whole name, all the syllables, middle name, etc., and in my case, it's Jeffrey Mark Stratton. Would you come here? I need to see you. This is my wife. She's on the computer in our little study, and I'm going, I'll be right there. I was doing something else. She said, no, you will come in here right now. So I walk into the room, and she's staring at the computer, and she says, what is this? What is what? She's got the email open, and there is an email I'm reading from a fellow in South Carolina who says to me, Mr. Stratton, you don't know me, but we heard you have a heck of a reputation as a liar in South Carolina. We'd like you to come and compete in this contest. I had never been to South Carolina. How could somebody in South Carolina recognize me as some kind of liar? But I was intrigued. You know, it's a man thing. Hey, got a challenge here. Yeah, well, who is this? Let's follow this up. I saw it as a challenge. My wife, ladies, tell me if I'm wrong, she saw it as not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Not a good thing for the family that strangers in other states think you're a liar. Somewhat humiliating in her mind. Ah, come on, sweetie. So I got on and I looked at it and I went, nah, I've never competed before. I do tell storytelling in Jonesboro. We do that every week. But I've never competed. Well, then I got a second email that said, no, we really want to hear you telling us some lies. So I went ahead and I applied. Well, then I asked my wife, you want to come with me? I've got to drive 3 hours to come down here. And she said, sweetie, after 30 years, if you don't mind, I'd rather not hear anymore for a bit. She'd had enough. So I invited a friend of mine from church. I'm going to call him Bob, just in case he's out here somewhere. Bob. Older fella. And he thought that would be kind of a fun thing to do. He'd never done anything like this. I had never done anything, and we were going to travel together. Now, when I say an older fellow, let me start by saying I am the proud owner of a flip phone. It's a phone. It's what I want. I can't make spaghetti. I can't find directions. I can't read the news. I just talk. I can't even text because these dumb buttons. You got to push them so many times. I'm okay with it. I just want a flip phone. Well, my buddy Bob, who's a little older, we're both in our late 60s, he also has a flip phone. And he said, well, I'll be your navigator. You want to drive? We said, great. Well, what do you do if you don't have GPS on your phone? How do we find directions? You get on the computer the night before, you Google it, you turn your printer on, prints out 2, 3, 4 pages with the little colored lines, right? The directions with the stapler. And I went and picked him up the next day. And he gets in the car and he holds up a packet of paper. He says, look, I Googled our route on the map. Because that's what us old guys do. And I said, I already got one. And he said, oh, no big deal. So he took them both and down the road we went. Well, we come out of Jonesboro, I-26, come down into Asheville, keep coming down. And we turn off in an area called Flat Rock. Flat Rock, yeah. 11, is that the highway? Okay, thank you guys. Well, we're doing fine until we get to our first T intersection, and there's a lot of them. And I said, where do we go? And he said, well, your paper says we go left. I said, then I go left. He says, no, mine says we go right. Have you ever heard of this happening? The directions are not the same. I've heard of horror stories. People say, I Googled something, it said make a left turn, but the road went to the right and the cliff was on the left. You hear these stories, it's like, whoa. So we had a bit of an argument, okay? And he finally says to me, you're driving, I'm navigating, turn right. So I turn right, and we go down a little ways. Boom, another T intersection. Bob, what do I do? And he says, well, now yours says this, mine says that. I said, well, you got it the first time. Why can't we do it with mine the second time? He said, no, I think yours is all wrong. We're going to go with mine. So we did. I'm here to tell you it was almost 3 hours, and we were somewhere in the piney woods of South Carolina that away. The only reason I know that is when we came down the road, finally, last year, I recognized this field and parking lot on my right. I have no idea how we got here. But what happened is we started getting turned around, and I was running out of time. And I said, Bob, we got to be close. Where do we go? And he said, first time he admitted, I don't know. Now between us, we got about 135 years of age. And we got 2 Google instructions that don't match. And we don't know what to do. And I'm in a hurry because I got to be here by a certain time. Well, I'm still driving, we go around the corner, and this is where life changed. There was, on the curve of the road, there was a row of those rural mailboxes, right? 10, 15, 20 of them, you know how they stack them up on a curve? And there was a fellow in bib overalls and a hat, bending down, working on them. And as I came around the curve, I said, idea. Let's do something our wives don't think we're capable of. Let's stop and ask directions. We'll make our wives so proud of us. So we do. Pull right over to this fellow. Bob's over here, of course. The fellow working on the box is right next door. And he turns around and says, can I help you fellas? And we said, yeah. We're kind of turned around. He says, what are you looking for? We're looking for a town called Pickens or a place called Hagood Mill. And he goes, oh yeah, where are you from? Does it really matter? And I said, well, Tennessee. And he turns and walks back to the back of my car. Well, I see you're from Tennessee. Oh boy, oh boy. What you doing? And I said, we're looking for a festival, sir. There's a storytelling. He says, what kind of storytelling? Well, there's a lot of storytelling, but I'm going to be competing in a liar's contest. He goes, oh yeah, you a liar? Sometimes, more often than not. He goes, what kind of lies you tell? Sir, is there any way you could give us directions? Are we on the right road, or do we need to turn back? Because we're turned around. He says, well, wait a minute now. What kind of lies you tell? And he proceeds to grill us about what we're doing down there and why we're down there, and do we like living in Tennessee? And I'm tasking my friend Bob, get the directions. If he doesn't know, just say, I don't know. We'll go back where we can. And the guy finally turns to us, he says, well, you're looking for Pickens, right? And I said, yes, sir. He says, well, have you ever been there before? If I've been there before, I wouldn't be asking directions. And he says to us, he says, now you're going down the highway here, and by the way, folks, if this describes your neighborhood, maybe I was there. He says, you go on down the highway, and he said, about a mile, there's a country road off to the left, little T intersection. He said, you turn around, you take that, you go about a mile or two over the bridge, and you end up over here in the hayfield. I said, well, thank you, appreciate it. And he goes, have a nice day. And as he turns, he goes, now did I say that was the first turn? Yes, sir. He said, I'm thinking it's the second turn. Well, where is that? Well, about another mile and a half from the first mile and a half, there's another country road to the left. And you go on down there and make you a turn and go down over the bridge and all that. Then he stops and he goes, maybe it is the first turn. I said, sir, how are we going to know which turn it is? He said, I got the idea. He said, when you're going down the road, there's a ridge on your right, a ridge, big tall ridge. And he said, the leaves haven't come all down, so it's kind of hard to see, but there's some houses up there. I see ridges with houses all the time. Yeah, but these got porches on them. Don't most houses have porches on them? Yeah, but these got rocking chairs on the porches. I I have 3 rocking chairs on my porch. I'm sure most people do. Yeah, but he says, look for the big rocking chair. It's a real big one. It's like 3 times bigger than a rocking chair. For those of you who remember TV in the 60s and 70s, Lily Tomlin, the actress that would sit in the rocking chair and she'd rock back and forth and she played some mean little girl. Remember that? Just talk all kinds of smack. He said, that's what you're looking for. I said, so let me get it straight. It's the first left or the second left? He said, yeah, but look for the houses with the porches with the rocking chair, and it's a big rocking chair. Big, big, big. 4 people could sit in it. I said, okay. And he said, but it's going to be hard to see through those trees. So he said, what you're going to do when you get to the first intersection, make a turn and go up the gravel drive up at the ridge to those houses and look for the porch with a big swing or chair. He said, but don't stay too long. He says, those folks don't like no strangers. And he says, I can see you're from Tennessee. I'm starting to get nervous. He said, now if that don't turn out to be the right one, then go get you on down the road, go to the second one, go up there, gravel, drive around, and he said, I'm sure you'll find it. And then he says the famous last words, you can't miss it. Okay, I look at my friend, he looks at me, and we're thinking, man, we've lost 10 or 20 minutes, we're no better off than we were, we gotta go. So I said, well, thank you, sir, I appreciate it. And my friend turned around, and he couldn't let it lay, could he? No. He says, so how do you like living down here in South Carolina? I've never been here before. This fellow pulls his hat back, snaps his straps. He says, well, he says, I'm really not from around here. I'm from Maine. Maine, the state of Maine, up by Canada. Yes, sir, I'm from the state of Maine. It's our turn to ask questions. What is a guy from Maine doing down here in South Carolina giving directions? He said, well, I'm just down here visiting my daughter, helping her with some chores. He said, but good luck wherever you go. And off we go. And I'm looking at Bob, and Bob's looking at me going, you know, I'm getting a bad feeling right here. Well, we go down about a mile, and there is that turnoff, and there's the gravel, and we get up it and pull up, and I go up and down this kind of a dirt little road with maybe 8 or 10 homes up there. Guess what? They all got porches. And every porch has rocking chairs. But we didn't see any big ones. What we did see is people coming out from behind their trucks, people coming out from the houses, and they're giving us the look. You ain't from around here, you're from Tennessee. You could just see it. And it was like, don't hang around, let's go. So we go down the gravel and down the road and turn and go another 1.5 miles, as I said, and go up that one, up to a ridge with a bunch of houses with porches and rocking chairs. And I says to Bob, we can't find it. I'm driving 3 hours back to Jonesboro, and we're just going to throw this out the window. That's it. This is enough. And he says, Jeffrey, he said, there it is. And folks, does anybody know where I'm talking? It's somewhere that away, several miles. There's a monster rocking chair in somebody's porch at an intersection of County Road and County Road. No? Nobody knows? Anyway, we went up there, we found it. Of course, the people started coming out, and they're getting on their phones, and we're saying, don't mess with, we gotta go. We're just looking for a chair, thank you. And we drove down, and fortunately, we found our way in here. So we competed, took several hours, and again, as Johnny said, the top 3 all came from Jonesboro, Tennessee. By the way, one of them is here in the audience. I'm just going to refer to him. But our occupations were retired cop, minister, college professor. Top 3 liars, all from the little town called Jonesboro, Tennessee. Is it the water? Is it the water? What is it? Is it the heritage? No, we all come from different places. I don't know. Well, one of them is going to be competing up here a little later. Let's see how he does. As I walked across here with my prizes, and let me tell you, they were very nice prizes. You got a little check for your time and some money, or time and gas. You got a blue ribbon about yay big. What else did we get? Pictures on Facebook on this stage. Invited to come back next year, which I am doing. The best of all, 1 year's bragging rights. I'm from Arizona. I didn't really know what bragging rights are. I know the concept of bragging, not that I've ever done it, but I didn't know what bragging rights are. And they said, you can brag about this for a whole year, 52 weeks. And let me tell you, as recently as yesterday at the Sam's Club gas station in Johnson City, When I was getting gas, and I turned to the guy and I said, hey, I'm from Tennessee. Do you know how I got that? And we started talking. I was still bragging about winning the Liars Contest. My wife is about up to here with it, as you can imagine. She said to me, thank God you're not competing. Just come home and your 52 weeks are over. When we left here, I was calling her to tell her I had won this. And I realized very quickly, my wife of 30 years is not going to believe me. With due cause. She's not going to believe me. I'm leaving a Liars Contest and she knows me. So I took the phone out and I handed it to my buddy Bob and I said, Bob, she knows you from church. You call her. You tell her. And as we're walking over there to the car, I dial my own number and he's talking to her 4 times. I can hear my buddy telling my wife, no, sweetheart, no, he did not put me up to this. No, honey, listen to me. Your husband is the first place champion liar out here. No, honey, no, swear to God and go to church. I am not making this up. And I realized that there was no way I could tell her. He had to. And at the end, he says he's bringing home proof. He's bringing home proof. So anyway, off we go and we drive, and we kind of unwound our way back somehow through these roads, and it was starting to get close to, not quite dark, but starting to, past the houses with the porches, with the chairs. The guy was still working on the mailbox. Hours later, maybe all of them, I don't know what he was doing. We just waved and kept going. Just, don't even stop. We'll never get home now. We came home, I dropped my buddy off. I dialed home and I said, I'm about 10 minutes away. Just thought I'd let you know. And my wife said to me, do me a favor. She said, when you pull up to the driveway, stop the car, park it, and walk in, please. I live on acreage. My driveway is about 350 feet from the street to the garage. Kind of a long driveway. I said, why do I want to do that? She says, because, honey, we only have a 2-car garage. Well, yeah, your car and my car. She said, no, you don't understand. She says, right now, the way you are, your head won't fit in a 2-car garage. My sweet wife, looking out for my best interest, isn't she? And she said, I know you. I want you to cool down and just walk down that driveway. Bring your pulse down. You're excited and come home. So I finally walked up to the garage. She opened up the door. She and the dogs checked me out and decided, yes, after all, you can come in. So I had to go back out to the street, get my car, and bring it in. Well, then I got on the phone immediately and started calling. Brothers, sisters, I have 5 of them. Sisters, cousins, this, that. My brother put me in my place very quickly. He said, aren't you glad there were no lawyers or car salesmen out there? You never got on stage. Okay. That's possible. But my cousin really put me in my place. Cousin Clomo. My cousin Clomo, he said, Jeffrey, he said, isn't it good that your mother died many, many years ago? She died many years ago. She would have been in her 90s today. And I said, why would that be good? And he said, because she does not have to see her oldest son being celebrated as a champion liar. Your mother was old school. She was actually an immigrant from Ukraine. She would have not understood this. How are you squandering all your life telling lies in front of people? What are the neighbors going to say? Right? Mothers say that. How about this? Don't do that. You're going to put an eye out. If you keep lying, you're going to put an eye out. Always, if I came home with bad grades, stop that. You're going to put an eye out. It was always putting an eye out, which I never knew anybody missing an eye. But okay, that's mothers. But anyway, Cousin Clomo and I were talking, and he said, Jeffrey, he says, can I come by and visit you? Now, he lives in California, Northern California, up near Oregon. And I said, yeah, what do you got going? He says, I got a business proposition I'd like to make. I said, okay. So Cousin Clomo drove over, and it took about a week, came out and visited me. Now, you hear a name, Cousin Clomo, and you think, has anybody heard of anybody with that name ever? No. The reason is his family were old hippies in Northern California, up there in that Berkeley, San Francisco area, back in the 1960s. And his parents kind of ran around in the woods with not a whole lot of clothing on and did a lot of nothing other than stealing vegetables from people's gardens. By the way, back in those days, they called it liberating. Liberating banks, liberating stores, liberating. You're stealing. They called it liberating. And his mom and dad, Cousin Clomo's mom and dad, at one point in, let's just say they were putting a lot of chemicals in their body of all types, which is typical back then. They came to the understanding that they worship Mother Moon and Father Sun and the wind and the water and nature. And he said to her one day, he said, you know, sweetie, he said, by the way, her name's Lulu. He says, if we believed what we're saying, we would name ourselves after the basic elements of life. Any chemists, physicists out here? No. You wouldn't admit it, would you? Y'all have had classes, I know I did in chemistry, where they hand this thing out to you, or they show this up on a board. It's called the periodic table of elements. It's like every mineral and elemental product. I think it's 116 of them. His dad happened to see one of these one day, and he happened to be looking at it while some chemicals are running through his system. And he said, look at that, you can make a name out of those. And that started a whole family tradition. When my cousin was born, he was the firstborn, they looked at this chart and they came up with a name. Cousin Clomo. Now, cousin is C-U-Z-N, not spelled like you all would. It comes from copper zinc. Clomo, C-L, capital O, capital M-O, chlorine, oxygen, molybdenum. So his real name is copper, zinc, chlorine, oxygen, molybdenum, cousin Clomo. They like that so much that Lulu, her name actually comes from lutetium. Have you ever heard of that? It's in here, lutetium. Lulu, so her name is now lutetium. We just call her L squared. It's so much simpler. And my uncle is Maurice. That was his real name, but it's spelled in a way you've never seen. Capital M-O, capital R-E, capital C-E. Molybdenum, rhenium, cesium. Maurice. It's the way they are. It's the way they are. And the one that I think takes the cake is their daughter, my other cousin, Rebecca. What a beautiful name. Don't you think, Rebecca? Any Rebeccas in my audience? Y'all know a Rebecca? A Becky? Sure. Normally it's R-E-B-E-C-C-A. Hers is capital R, you know this is coming, E, capital B-E, capital C-A, only one C. Rhenium, beryllium, calcium. Rebecca. This is where the family came from. This is what they're all about. And when Cousin Clomo called and said, Jeffrey, I'm coming to visit, my wife said, do we have time to lock the house and leave? No, we don't. So he showed up, and we sat around the house having a beer, and believe it or not, we were telling each other lies. And he made a business offer to me. He said, we've been selling those organic veggies up there in California and Oregon for years, and it started out with a little roadside stand, and then we were doing the truck, and then we did 2 trucks, and then we got a little more. They ended up basically opening up the organic food business up in that part of the world in the 60s and 70s, way back before anybody was interested in gluten-free, non-GMO, cholesterol. They started it. To the point they got so big that they sold to a Chinese corporation and they made millions. Millions. They still don't know how to buckle a belt, but they're worth millions. So Cousin Clomo comes out, and we're sitting around talking, and he says, you want to make some extra money? Do you know anybody that says no to that question? Well, I know him enough. I said, why? Why? He said, I got a business opportunity, Jeffrey, you're going to love. He says, you know how people go to farmers markets and they buy all this organic stuff, or in stores like Earth Fare and Whole Foods and all these others? He said, for years we've been making goat cheese. Y'all have had goat cheese? Usually cost a little more, right? And a lot of people love the goat cheese. It was a step above the old cheese when I grew up, Velveeta. Remember that stuff, Velveeta, and Cheese Whiz in a bottle that you kind of poured out on that white Wonder Bread that would just tear and fall apart? That's the way I grew up. It was no good. People graduated from that into real cheeses and into goat cheese. And he said, Jeffrey, I'm here to tell you, he said, as an entrepreneur, a man that knows how to make money, a man who can read the trend, we need to move on past goat cheese. Everybody's doing goat cheese. And if you go to your farmer's market, I'll bet you there's 1 or 2 people out there making goat cheese, selling it, all kinds, very tasty. I said, well, what do you got in mind? And he said, hear me out. Hear me out. Watch my lips. You guys remember The Graduate? The movie came out late 60s? When Dustin Hoffman is being taken aside by the older man, and he says, what was Dustin Hoffman's character's name? Ben? I think Ben. Ben, he whispers to him, plastics. The future is plastics. You all remember that? Some of you who saw that? He's giving him some idea where you need to be going because the whole world is going to go into plastics. Plastics weren't that popular in those years. Cousin Cloma looks at me and he says, Jeffrey, watch my lips. Sharks, milk, cheese. Sharks, milk, cheese. I said, put the beer down. You've had too much. He said, no. He says, we're making it. We're making it. We're selling it. People can't get enough of it. Sharks, milk, cheese. I said, what are you talking about? He said, non-GMO, gluten-free, the cholesterol is low, and he said, and they all want free-range shark cheese. Nobody wants penned up shark milk cheese. They want free range, just like the chickens and the eggs. And I said, get out of here. I said, what are you smoking? You've got that stuff stuck in you from years ago. And he says, no, we're selling it. We're making big money. He said, let me tell you 2 of them I'm making. He said, if you like a soft, spreadable cheese, you can do no better than the Hammerhead Havarti. Mwah. The Hammerhead Havarti. I said, come on. And he said, if you like a white wine, he said, the Great White Gouda. That is a cheese. That is to try. Well, I'm going to fast ahead for a minute and tell you that a couple days later, while he and I were running around Johnson City, we stopped in the Earth Fair. There's an Earth Fair by ETSU. Maybe some of you know it. And we were walking there, my wife, he, and me, and I'm showing him that we do have that kind of food in Johnson City because he didn't think Tennessee ever did. They got misconceptions, and we're showing him, no, people are pretty open-minded. Come see for yourself. And they had some Havarti in the window. And my cousin leans over and he asked her, he said, hey, she said, would you like a sample? He said, do you have any of that Hammerhead Havarti? And she said, pardon me? He said, it's Hammerhead, it's from shark's milk. And the woman said, no, I've never heard of that. He says, it's wonderful. She said, sir, let me ask the manager. He said, oh yeah, we eat it all the time. So she went and got the manager. My wife saw the manager coming. My wife turned around and said, oh God. And she turned around and disappeared somewhere in the store, far away from what was going to come down. And he proceeded to ask the manager, do you have any of that Hammerhead Havarti? And the manager said, what's it from? And he said, well, it's shark's milk cheese. And the manager of this deli said, I've never heard of it. He said, but you know, sir, he said, that sounds like something our West Coast stores might carry. That's true. That actually happened. And he said, if you want to, I can get online and look and see if we can order some within the system. And I look at my cousin and I go, don't do it. Because he's going to leave and we're going to be stuck as customers for the rest of our life going in and out of there with a reputation. Don't do it. Do not order it. Just thank him and say you'll think about it. So we pulled away and off we went. So we went back to the house, and he's explaining to me, and I'm having misgivings. Can you blame me? Why would we want to do this? He said, everybody wants it. He said, let me tell you what happens. He said, first of all, he said, I hire an only girl crew, women only. And he said, there's a statistical reason for this. He said, because if you look up, and y'all can Google, I can't because I have one of these old phones. You want to Google, you'll find out that 90% of all reported shark fatalities happen to be males. From the beginning of time, ever since people have recorded shark fatalities, 90% of the victims have been males. Now, 90% of bungee jumping accidents tend to be males. We also know 90% of motorcycle accidents tend to be males. We're not sure of the correlation here, but it is a statistic. That being the fact, my cousin said, for that reason, I hire a woman-only crew. The odds are 90%, none of them will ever get bitten by a shark, because it says so in the stats. The other thing you have to do, 2 things really, and North Carolina is demanding it now, because he was going to go out and fish off the coast here. Actually, I have to admit, we actually did go out this summer. Wasn't a good experience, but I'll tell you in a minute. He said 2 things you got to do. Number 1, you got to get certified by the state in terms of species identification. You got to know what kind of shark it is you're milking. And that's because what they call truth in advertising. Okay, if you're milking a hammerhead, you can't sell it as tiger shark cheese or leopard. You've got to make sure it's the correct thing. Isn't that fair? And he said the second thing you got to do is have a gender identification course. Because if you go out there and you milk a male, you will agitate him. Don't do it. You need to know which ones are the females. Now, he used to put them out there in the boat and run the boat out way out in the ocean. And then when they saw shark activity, and usually he threw down that chum, they call it, that kind of agitates them, the girls would jump in and milk the sharks, come out and get what they needed and come home. He said that's costing money. And last summer, he happened to notice that the North and South Carolina coast, y'all are having a lot of shark sightings. Am I wrong? Am I right? Seems to me this last 2 years have been a lot of sightings and attacks of sharks. Not all fatal, I'm not saying that, but there's been a whole bunch of sharks showing up very close to beaches. It's caused problems. And he said, I'm an entrepreneur. I know how to make money. What we're going to do, we're going to get a truck and we're going to go down to the beaches along the Carolinas. And we're going to sit in the parking lots and we're going to put on wetsuits. And we're going to wait for the call. And when we hear that the EMTs or anybody's calling saying that there's sharks out there, when everybody runs out, we're going to turn and we're going to run in. Now, they're not going to let us run in, but we're going to moonwalk backwards, kind of like Michael Jackson. It looks like we're coming out, but we're actually going in. And we went into the water, and we found us a shark. And you just throw something over their eyes, like you kind of do a bird, a parakeet or something, and one does the milking, the other does the holding. Well, if y'all can see that, that's where I got that injury. I've got a scar and a screw in my elbow because of a nip. We call it a nip. Not as bad as Cousin Clomo. He lost about 4 inches of his pompey in a bite. His wife now gives him a foam pad about this thick, and he sets it under him so he doesn't listen to the port every time he sits down. So when you go to your farmers markets, ask them. When you go to your delis, ask them, do you have any shark's milk cheese? Hammerhead Havarti or Great White Gouda are the best. And if you do, enjoy it. It's wonderful. Appreciate you.